My parents started their sports nutrition business when I was a kid, and I watched them work tirelessly to make it successful. My name is Maria Richardson. Being born into an affluent family may lead some to believe that life is easy and luxurious, but nothing could be further from the truth. From an early age, my parents instilled in me the importance of working hard, particularly my father. The first time my dad took me to his office is a memory that will never fade. I was 7 years old, attempting to seem as put together as a second grader could in my beloved blue frock adorned with small flowers. "Maya," he added, arranging me at a compact desk adjacent to his office, "you'll have to work just as hard as I did to earn all of this because one day it might be yours." All through my youth, their remarks had an impact. My summers were filled with studying customer service and inventory management while my peers splashed around in the pool. I relished every moment of being a kid, even if Mom occasionally fretted that I was losing out. Richardson Nutrition became an extension of my family. Internships at Dad's company and business classes made college fly by. No favoritism. That was our agreement. I worked my way up through the ranks of every department, beginning at the warehouse. Coworkers who had known me since I was a kid looked on with approval as I figured things out as I went. Upon finishing college, I threw myself into my position at the business. A plethora of meetings, reports, and strategy discussions filled my days. Dating? That idea was completely alien to me. Sarah, my dorm roommate in college, made fun of me by saying I was married to my profession. The yearly holiday party at the office was the turning point. I stayed behind to finish some quarterly reports, so I was running late as usual. The revelry was in full flow when I got there at last. James Cooper, a representative from our Denver office, walked by at that moment. My 14-hour shift seemed to melt away when I saw her easy smile and beautiful brown eyes. She was tall, too. "Maya, I hope you are," he murmured, reaching out to shake her hand. "I'm familiar with your reputation." As I accepted his handshake, I chuckled and said, "All good things, I hope." "The best," he said, "even though they failed to acknowledge your beauty." In the course of that evening, we spoke at length about our hopes, aspirations, and careers. No one else appeared to get me as well as he did. My heart did a little flip when, at the end of the night, he asked for my number. We began exchanging messages continuously once James got back to Denver. Every morning he would text me, "Good morning, beautiful," and at night we would have lengthy discussions about our days. He seemed like an old friend. I leaked one night after a very lengthy video call. "Would you like to move to the main office instead? It would be fantastic for your career if we were to be together." On his side there was a pause. "No way, Maya. Denver is where my parents, sister, and nephew all call home. We're almost there." I was unable to abandon them. His next comment, "But why don't you come here?" made my heart sink a bit more. "Your skills would be an asset to the Denver branch." It took me a day to process that idea before I went to see Dad in his office. "Dude, I'm in need of some guidance. Could you please let me know your thoughts on my potential transfer to the Denver branch?" As I described James to him, I kept a close eye on his expression. Surprisingly, Dad merely grinned at me. "When would you ask? I've been wondering. James enjoys a stellar reputation inside the organization, and the Denver office is in dire need of an inspirational leader. I will fulfill your request if this is what you desire." After a span of 2 weeks, I found myself encircled by moving boxes in James's Denver apartment. As he embraced me, he proclaimed, "Welcome home. It seems like I was at the right place at the right time." I was taken aback by how quickly we met his family for the first time. Tom and Linda, his parents, Rachel, his sister, and Kyle, Rachel's adolescent son, all resided in a small 2-story house together. When we pulled up to their house, I felt a flush of anxiety. "Your family must own a palace," Linda exclaimed as soon as I entered the room. "You must think this is easy." My cheeks turned red. "Oh no, absolutely not. Everything has always been very normal for us. Just a typical house, no mansions or private jets. But surely, considering the wealth of your family, Tom stepped forward first. I've been working hard for everything ever since I was a little child, I said. You had to work your way up, according to Dad. Truthfully, I prefer the easy stuff. I attempted to disregard the disapproving stares they exchanged. Rachel, who is the sister of James, hardly glanced at me as she examined my unadorned sweater and jeans. I would only wear designer labels if I had your money, she smirked. Not knowing what to say, I simply shrugged. James put his fist on my hand beneath the table without offering any kind of defense. James made the proposal while strolling around the park 2 months down the road. All it took was a simple ring, a sincere query, and the two of us. Quickly, I responded with a yes. Our first major argument occurred during the wedding preparation process. James had grand visions of a massive venue, hundreds of guests, and a plethora of decorations. My argument was that we didn't need all that. Let's start with something modest but significant. Though he was far from pleased, he eventually caved. I overheard Linda chatting to her sister throughout the reception, despite the fact that our ceremony was small and only immediate family was present. For someone with her history, I was hoping for more. This is all just so simple. I put on an act of not hearing, but I couldn't deny that their comments hurt. Concerns regarding housing arose shortly after the marriage certificate was printed. It was brought up during our Sunday supper at Tom and Linda's. Rachel was engrossed in her phone. Kyle was occupied with video games in the corner, and Tom was glued to the TV, watching sports as we had our regular family gathering. As Linda passed the mashed potatoes to Maya, she asked, "So, have you discussed the possibility of purchasing a house with your father? It would be ideal if there was anything along Cherry Creek. I came across this stunning 5-bedroom property with a pool while perusing the ads yesterday. Because of the water, I almost choked. In fact, we intend to put money aside and eventually purchase our own residence." Following this, there was an ear-piercing quiet. Midway to her lips, Rachel's fork came to a halt. Tom shifted his gaze to me as he turned off the television. I was starting to recognize that fake smile all too well when Linda's face went white. Their intense staring at each other gave me the impression that I had said something completely inappropriate. "But I'm sure your dad wouldn't object," Tom began, then used his napkin to wipe his mouth. "Well, when their children are competent, it's only natural for parents to lend a hand and get them started." I sat up straighter in my chair and politely but firmly cut him off. "James and I would prefer to handle this independently. Working together, we can put money away. I think it's important to work for what you have." With a little perspiration on his palm, James extended his hand toward mine beneath the table. "I stand with Maria on this," he stated, although his voice betrayed no true conviction. "On the other hand, my apartment is doing really fine right now. It is in a fantastic position, and I have been renting it for a long time." As if she had suddenly got a wonderful idea, Linda's eyes brightened up. She was a bit too forceful as she put her wineglass down. "It would be fair for Maria to cover the rent if you intend to remain in the flat. Ultimately, her income is far higher than yours, James. It's about time." As I observed, my spouse nodded in accord, perhaps a bit too hastily for my liking. "That makes sense," he said, avoiding eye contact with me. $3,000 per month. I was caught unawares by the sum. While not cheap, that seemed steep for our neighborhood in Denver. Even yet, I was careful not to cause a stir. The air tension in the room was palpable. "Absolutely, that's fair," I responded, making an effort to maintain a pleasant tone. Thus, we settled into a pattern. I would provide James with $3,000 monthly, and he would take care of the rent. Whenever I passed by, he would quickly shut his phone screen, and I would occasionally catch him performing the transfer. This continued for some time until I was evaluating our monthly spending when an idea came to me. As I was paying the rent now, I thought, maybe I should take over the lease. I stated this one night as we ate dinner in our kitchen, listening to the city outside through the open window. To simplify things for the taxman, we could just put it in my name. Strange and instantaneous was James's reaction. His face turned somewhat pale as he tightened up, almost dropping his fork upon his almost eaten spaghetti. "No, that won't work," he exclaimed with more urgency than normal. "Mr. Johnson has been my landlord for many years. I am trusted by him. We should not tamper with something that is working." His behavior severely disturbed me. His eyes evaded my gaze, and his hands trembled slightly as he grabbed for his glass of water. However, I ignored the emotion as I had been doing with a lot of little issues recently. Denver life had become monotonous. At the branch office, I was getting comfortable with my new role as team manager, while also keeping up with my weekly video conversations with my parents. It seems like everything was going according to plan. However, there remained a persistent concern of mine. The initial occurrence was on a Tuesday. Even though I was sick with a headache when I got home from work, Linda and Rachel were already on the couch, watching TV and devouring the pricey fish that I had purchased for James's birthday dinner. "Oh, Maya," Linda responded without lifting a finger. We were merely enjoying a small snack. I remained motionless, my gaze fixed on them, key in hand. It was like a tornado had ripped through my kitchen. Their shoes were resting on my coffee table, and periodicals were all over the place. This started happening all the time. They would be waiting for me when I got home, or even worse, I would find empty food containers, rearranged belongings, and obvious evidence of rummaging through my closet. These people possessed keys. Naturally, they possessed keys. James and I attempted to have a conversation about it one night. "Weird, isn't it, honey, that your mom and sister can drop over any time they like?" His gaze was fixed on his phone the entire time. "Maya, they are family. You're exaggerating a bit. Relax, please." However, I was unable to relax after discovering that they were poring over my personal documents one day. They couldn't help but giggle at my college diary, which I had not yet opened. My voice was solid as I stated, "We need to talk." My fingers trembled slightly as I spoke. "This must stop. Please don't show up unannounced at our house. Examine our belongings." "No way." In an instant, Linda's face drooped. Like a faucet turning on, her eyes welled up with tears. "How outrageous," she screamed. "After all we've done to make you feel at home here. Your illustrious background made you seem too nice to be true to us." James strolled in as if summoned. His mother was crying, Rachel was staring at me, and I was standing there in disbelief as he took it all in. He hurried to his mother's side and yelled, "What did you do?" But she was gone. "She's attempting to distance us from you," Linda sobbed into his shoulder. "According to her, we are no longer welcome here." I didn't mean that. I was about to speak when James interrupted. "What gives you the right to abuse them this way? They are my loved ones." James flipped on me when they departed, his expression incredibly severe. "You must address this," he admonished, "as an apology. Buy them something nice, really nice." I left work early the following day to go shopping. I treated Linda to the fancy purse she had been talking about, and Rachel to a pricey pair of boots. The act of wrapping them made my hands feel filthy. They smiled smugly as they took the presents I brought to their residence. Linda looked at the purse and remarked, "We knew you'd come around," but she didn't even look at me. Rachel added, "These will do," as she tried on the boots. James re-established contact with me that evening. "Do you see? Was that really that difficult?" he said as he kissed my cheek. Something, though, had shifted, and I still hadn't figured it out. I didn't anticipate how bad things may get after the border incident. Rachel and Linda elevated the art of gift demanding to a whole new level. Expectations were heightened at every little holiday. In her texts to Maya, Rachel would remind her that next week is National Sister Day. This gorgeous Gucci bag caught my eye. Today is the anniversary of the day I held James for the first time as a baby, Linda would declare. A spa weekend sounds like the perfect way to celebrate, she said. The list of excuses got longer and longer, including Mother's Day, birthdays, Christmas, Easter, Valentine's Day, Labor Day, Memorial Day, and even Groundhog Day. An emotional Linda broke down over family dinner when I expressed my reluctance to get her a $500 scarf in honor of Arbor Day. With a sniff, she said, "I suppose some people simply don't comprehend the importance of family loyalty," as Rachel rubbed her back, despite our enthusiastic greeting to her. Later that night, James asked Maya, "Why are you always so hard to get along with? They are now also considered family." "James, I really believe this is becoming ridiculous. Your mom wanted a luxury watch last week in honor of National Ice Cream Day." He simply shrugged. "Why not help family if you can afford it?" Just when things were getting bad enough, Rachel's son, Kyle, who is 15 years old, began dropping by our apartment more often. Everyone goes through tough times as an adolescent, so I tried to be understanding at first. However, Kyle's attitude was unprecedented for a teenager. I poured hours into perfecting my grandmother's secret lasagna recipe one night. After taking a single bite, Kyle discarded the platter. "This is crap," he said. "Your mother thinks you're a terrible cook since you were always pampered as a child." With a firmer grasp, I held my fork. "Kyle, that should be avoided." "Whatever," he interrupted me. "My friends and I need $60 so we can go to the movies." The moment I said no, he stumped on the kitchen chair. "It's all on you. Put an end to being so frugal. To feel better about yourself, Mom argues you're pretending to be impoverished." After Kyle's actions that night, I attempted to broach the subject with James. As we prepared to go to sleep, I hoped he'd finally come to his senses. "My darling, Kyle was quite rude today. May I ask if you could speak with him?" James had his head buried in his phone. "It is up to you to deal with it. We will have our own children someday, so this is just practice. You must acquire the necessary skills to handle such instances." Returning the following day, Kyle once again made an obnoxious demand for payment for an additional video game. After I declined, he slouched on our couch, cranked up the TV loud, and began slamming fake, humble, rich people. I glanced at my husband, seeking solace, but he simply exited the room, abandoning me to contend with his smirking nephew on my own. Standing in my living room as an adolescent made fun of me in front of my entire family made me feel more isolated than I ever had before. Those 2 years can change a lot, or at least how much you can convince yourself that things will improve if you put in enough effort, be patient, and contribute. I informed James over breakfast one morning, "I'm going to visit Mom and Dad this weekend, and so it was. Do you want to go?" Without taking his eyes from his phone, he blinked. "I am unable to. I told my parents I would pitch in and help out around the house." I had a tranquil journey to my folks' place. While my parents cooked my favorite lasagna and Dad cracked his bad dad jokes, I was able to escape into a brief period of self-discovery, returning to my former self. Unfortunately, tranquility is easily broken into a million pieces by the realities of life. Stale pizza, beer, and an even worse smell greeted me as soon as I opened the door to our flat on Sunday night. On my coffee table was a greasy pile of pizza boxes. Half-empty Solo cups contained cigarette butts, and empty cans covered every surface. As I looked around my living room, I saw Kyle and 5 other kids lying around like they owned the place. They were all passed out among the remnants of what had obviously been a wild party. "Stand up!" Fury coursed through my voice as I yelled, "Leave immediately! Right now!" The rest of the teens jolted to life and fumbled to collect their belongings, but Kyle slouched and gave me his sly grin. "Then why should I go? This is my home now." My pulse rate quickened. "My apologies." He reached for a beer can with a half-empty sentiment saying, "Had a fight with Mom and Grandma. We thought this was a better rule than theirs. I was told I could crash here by Uncle James. This flat is for rent. Give me your keys now," I demanded with clenched jaw, even though we may have problems. Kyle genuinely chuckled. "Can you let me rent this apartment?" "Ah, very amusing. This apartment belongs to Uncle James. Since great-grandpa bequeathed it to him, it has been." The room began to swirl. "Excuse me, what do you mean? He owns the apartment from the beginning? Upon great-grandpa's death 5 years ago, I understood. It is well known by all." My voice and breath both came to a halt. Payments for rent for 2 years. On every occasion, I had proposed that my name be put on a lease. Without fail, he would sidestep the inquiry. Whenever he needed to pay rent, he would discreetly put his phone away. It was all an illusion. Because Kyle's demeanor completely transformed, I must have appeared as though I was going to pass out. Someone who appeared nearly sympathetic took the place of the arrogant adolescent. As he patted my shoulder awkwardly, he remarked, "Listen, there's something else you should be aware of." He retrieved his phone and began to tinker with it. "I've been secretly taping them while they talk. They started mentioning you while they were mentioning me, but now they mention you all the time." I used to adore James's laugh, and it was the first thing that came over the speaker. $3,000 a month going straight into his pocket. "It's perfect," he gushed. "It goes unquestioned by her." Kyle played recording after recording, and my stomach hurt with everyone. Regan never stopped broaching the subject of familial devotion. She always gives in. She was able to get me a brand new Prada bag last week. "Repeat after me. Get her pregnant as soon as possible." Linda warned him. "Her dad will have to shell out cash for a house for the two of you after the baby is born. No way he'll ever approve of an apartment for his granddaughter." Still, the worst was on the way. Prior to playing the subsequent one, Kyle paused. "She's completely mistaken," James said with a hint of a sloppy accent. "Not even in bed can you meet my needs. Thank goodness for Amanda, Julie, and that accounting lady. Simply watch out, darling." Linda cautioned once more. "Stay out of Maya's reach. That is, until we have extracted every last cent from her." As my fingers grew numb, the phone fell from my grasp. Kyle snatched it. My voice quivered as I asked, "Would you be so kind as to send me those?" He tapped his finger on his phone and nodded rapidly. The files came through, and I could hear the notification sounds on mine. Standing up, Kyle gathered his belongings. He reversed direction at the entrance. A low-key "I'm sorry" escaped his lips. "You are aware that they are all serpents. I have always been. Even Mom." Shrugging, he went on with his day. "I guess it explains why they despise me. Unlike them, I can't put on an act." With a gentle click, the door shut behind him, and I found myself alone in the ruined flat. On my own with the facts regarding my marriage, my spouse, and the previous 2 years of my life. The flat was a disaster, but I didn't even try to clean it up. I would love for it to symbolize my marriage, a pretty front covering up terrible junk on the inside. In contrast, I hopped in my car and headed directly to Linda and Tom's house, where I knew their family would be gathering for Sunday supper. Like a scene out of a Norman Rockwell painting depicting a united family, James, Linda, Tom, and Rachel were all there, precisely as I had imagined them. I felt ill just looking at it. To Maya, instantly Linda's false grin spread across her face. "We had no idea you would show up. Where were your folks, Diggs?" I turned my full attention away from her and locked eyes with James. "Please provide me with the lease paperwork for our apartment." Silence fell over the room. Halfway to his mouth, James halted with his fork. "What do you mean?" "The agreement for renting. This is the lease. Bring it here." He got back to normal fast, putting on that endearing grin that had me smitten in the first place. The formal contracts aren't done by Mr. Johnson. You know, my darling, we've been friends for a long time. Mr. Johnson doesn't exist, I responded, interrupting him. The apartment is yours, has done so continuously. With an anxious, high-pitched voice, Linda hurriedly joined in. Maya, my darling, how about a pot roast? I gave the recipe you suggested a go. Linda, please be quiet. I spoke with an icy tone. Stunned, they all fixed their gazes on me. Before that, I had never addressed any of them in such a way. James, in the 2 years that I've paid you $3,000 monthly, what have you done with it? I could see perspiration forming on his brow as he laughed. Maya, it's not important. Come on. What does it matter that I am the owner of the apartment? I'm married to him. Just what is the difference? I retrieved my mobile device. We shall observe the impact it has. As James's speech echoed around the room, their expressions became lifeless. Yeah, it's great. $3,000 per month in my pocket. It goes unquestioned by her. After recording after-tape of their own voices belittling them, I played them all. The planning, the control, that sneer, the boasts made by James regarding his girlfriends, Rachel and Linda's plans to steal presents. Their goal in trying to conceive me is to increase their financial leverage over my father. It was as quiet as a tomb when I finally pressed the stop button. James had a ghostly face. Rachel appeared as if she were about to vomit. Even with meticulously applied makeup, Linda's fear was visible. With a firm voice, I told James, I'm divorcing you. The papers should be ready this week. These recordings will be made public if you attempt to contact me for any reason other than the divorce process. The corporate world would be interested to hear the details of how you deceived your wife and stole $72,000 from her. Their objections were ignored as I turned and left. I returned to the apartment, which was actually his place, and carefully and quickly gathered all of my belongings. I had packed up my car and was driving to my parents' place by the time the sun went down. Upon my arrival, I saw that Mom and Dad were still awake. They could tell something was seriously wrong just by looking at my face. I showed them the recordings and explained everything. The more secrets Dad revealed, the darker his face became. I'll take care of this, he responded after I was done. Then he did it. The following day, James was let go from his job, and Dad took great pains to ruin his name in the business world. Divorce procedures moved swiftly. James first fought against it, but the tapes ultimately proved him wrong. Concerning financial fraud, the judge was especially keen. James lost his flat and had his reputation tarnished, but that was all he got. After reestablishing my life, I returned to headquarters 3 months later and dove headfirst into my work. At that moment, Kyle texted me. We got together over coffee. His appearance had changed. He appeared older and calmer. I got a job at the car wash, he reported to me. I was the one who handed you the tapes, so when they found out, we left Mom's house. My life-changing choice. I may be able to lend you a hand, I declared. Find a job for you at the business. Mildly grinning, he shook his head in disapproval. I appreciate it, but I'll have to figure things out alone. Hey, how about a fresh start? Whatever, I'm putting money aside for community college. Absolutely, I got it. When all else fails, it may be necessary to start over from scratch and create something fresh and genuine. That evening, I stood in front of the mirror in my brand new apartment, the one I had just rented out with a legitimate lease in my name. When I turned around to face the woman who had fallen for James's charm 2 years ago, I saw a different person. Her strength, wisdom, and sense of true freedom had all returned to her. I removed each number from my contact list by picking up my phone. As the sun dipped below the horizon, it spotted the diamond ring on my ring finger, the one my grandmother had given me, not the one James had, and dispersed it into a myriad of sparkling lights. could feel the city's evening vitality, brimming with opportunity and fresh starts as I looked out my window. Mine was set to go.